Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for hopping on and spending your time with us on this lovely Tuesday afternoon. We will go ahead and get started in a minute. If you would like to, drop in the chat of your name, where you're calling in from, and what are you looking forward to taking away from this educational webinar. Alrighty, as folks are typing that into the chat, um, welcome to our webinar, Body Image and Diet Culture in the Media, Navigating a Healthy Relationship with Food and Self. My name is Joshua Jones, and I am the Engagement Manager at Digital for Good. Today, we are joined by registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor, Jaclyn Bendt, who you'll get to learn more about in a moment. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I want to share a little about Digital for Good. We are a nonprofit that educates students and adults about digital citizenship, safety, wellness, and literacy. Through our programs and events, we aim to celebrate youth innovation, empower student changemakers, and promote digital safety. Next slide, please. Digital for Good reaches thousands of students nationwide, and our impact is amplified even further by the quote-unquote train the trainer learning model feature in our curricula. At the foundation of our work is the idea that students are the core of the solution to online toxicity. The more we can do to train, guide, and support our students, the more likely they are to take positive action. As a brief reminder before we get started, we have opened the chat to feature the comments and questions from audience members. We will be holding a Q&A session after the presentation, so if you would like your question to be featured during this segment, please add 2 pound signs to the beginning of your question. Next slide, please. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce our guest speaker, Jaclyn Bendt. Jaclyn is a seasoned professional holding titles as a registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and certified intuitive eating counselor. Her expertise lies in empowering women to find their own sense of balance and freedom through personalized guidance in the realms of nutrition and fitness. With an extensive background in coaching and nutritional counseling, she has had the honor of supporting countless women in their quest to healing their gut health, harmonizing hormones, and adopting intuitive eating practices. Jaclyn stands ready to accompany you on a transformative journey towards fostering a positive connection with food and embracing a comprehensive approach to overall well-being. Thank you for joining us today, Jaclyn. I'll pass things over to you.
Thank you so much, Josh. Yeah, I appreciate it. You can head to the next slide. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you taking your time again on this Tuesday afternoon to spend time with me here and learn more about the topics of diet culture, body image, a couple topics I hold very close to home, of course, as a dietitian and with an interest in intuitive eating and just what I do on a daily basis. So we're going to dive right into an introduction. In today's world, there are a lot of societal pressures and media messages that often dictate how we should look, what we should eat, and it is very, very important that we address the impact of these influences on our overall well-being and specifically our mental health. And through discussing some powerful alternatives today, things like intuitive eating and body positivity, I hope that this presentation will equip you with some valuable insights and also tangible strategies that will empower you and even empower other people in your life, your peers, to promote a positive relationship with food, your body, and your mental well-being. So we'll dive into the next slide. So just to go over the agenda, what we're going to be discussing today. First off, we'll start with defining diet culture. I'm sure maybe some of us here have heard the term diet culture, but I think it's important that we define that and also discuss how that shows up in the media. And we'll discuss some specific trending diets that we might see in social media and what to really look out for. Then we'll discuss body image. We also will discuss eating disorders and the prevalence of those, because that is very connected to body image and diet culture. And I think it's important that we touch on the broader mental health issues as well. And then we'll discuss the powerful alternatives, as said earlier, intuitive eating and body positivity. And finally, to wrap things up, we will discuss the importance of seeking support and empowering change overall. Next slide, please. So first off, defining diet culture and unmasking its influence. Next slide, please. So what is diet culture? Diet culture is defined as a pervasive set of beliefs and practices that prioritize thinness and weight loss as the ultimate markers of health and success. And I'm sure we all have, just that idea in our minds because of the culture that we live in, that so often, losing weight is healthy and being thin means you are healthy, when that may not always necessarily be the case. We also see that diet culture has a huge permeation in society, from magazine covers that we might see when we're standing in line at the grocery store that, promise these quick fixes, right? To the before and after photos and transformations that we see on social media. Our society and our culture is very entrenched in this, so it's really, really hard to escape it. And to also start you off with a statistic, 25% of American men and 45% of American women are on a diet at any given day, which I think is a very, very, surprising statistic, you may think. And I think that just demonstrates just how, diet culture has permeated our society so strongly. Next slide, please. So now that we know what diet culture is, how does diet culture affect us on a day-to-day basis, or how does it affect us overall in the habits that we engage in and the actions that we take? So a lot of times diet culture leads people into this cycle of restriction. They might see a diet online and they're like, oh, I should try that. And then they end up depriving themselves of foods that, they truly enjoy. And this leads to feelings of deprivation, which also biologically and physiologically leads to cravings, right? So a lot of times that can manifest as binge eating, which if you engage in binge eating, you might then feel guilt. You might feel like you have, a lower self-esteem because you're criticizing yourself. Also, a lot of these things that we see lead to body dissatisfaction and a negative body image, which is what we will discuss a little bit later on, because this constant message that we should change our bodies to fit into this quote unquote ideal body really can mold and foster a negative body image. And a big thing to also bring up here is that so often when we do fall into that diet culture trap on social media, we might also fall into that comparison trap of comparing our bodies to other people. And a lot of times that can lead to a lot of body dissatisfaction as well. Next slide, please. So I wanted to point out a few diet trends in the media and really what to look out for. So first and foremost, quick fixes or miracle solutions. So kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, where you might see on a magazine cover, lose 10 pounds in a week, right? That is not healthy, and it is kind of like a miracle solution. Some other examples of this is, a detox tea, any sort of detox, or a juice cleanse, or fat burning supplements. Those are definitely things to keep an eye out for that are part of diet culture. Also, extreme diets is a big one, right? So keto diet, the paleo diet, intermittent fasting, these are things that are very extreme because they are cutting out an entire food group or an entire time of the day that you are allowed to eat. Also, I think that this is one that's becoming more and more popular, like every single year, is influencer endorsed diets. So if you see an influencer posting about, a specific supplement, that's something to look out for and question, because a lot of times these influencers might just be getting paid to market supplements and they might not have, the efficacy behind them. Also, what I eat in a day. This is something that is more and more trendy recently, that our influencers are sharing what they eat in a day. And then this influences consumers or other people on social media to think that they should eat that in a day to look like, their favorite influencer, for example. So definitely something to keep an eye out for. And then finally, diet trends that promote food fear. And this is very similar to some of those extreme diets, but any diet that says, you shouldn't eat carbs, or you shouldn't eat gluten, or sugar is bad, anything that is labeling foods as good versus bad is also something to look out for, because we really want to practice food neutrality, where no food is good, no food is bad, right? Yes, there are some foods that provide more nutrients than others, but at the end of the day, all foods are emotionally equivalent, I like to say. Next slide, please. So when you're looking through social media and maybe you're seeing a lot of nutrition information pop up, which I think it can be really, really hard and really confusing to navigate the online space, especially in just like the health and wellness area of things now, I wanted to give you some things to consider and some questions to, ask yourself when you see these different nutrition related posts. Number one, is it balanced? Is it something that I can maintain for life? If it's not going to be something maintainable or sustainable, then whatever transformation or result that that diet is promising is also not going to be sustainable long term. Also, does this diet encourage a balanced approach, or does it label foods as bad? So going back to what I was saying earlier, right? Is it cutting out an entire food group and things like that? Also, how will this impact my health physically and mentally? Is this diet that I might go on going to make me actually feel better physically? Is it going to make me feel better mentally? Or is it going to lead to more of, a negative relationship with food, or even heightened cravings? And then finally, a really, really big one here, of course, that is very important to me as a dietitian is this advice coming from a registered dietitian or a trained professional, a healthcare practitioner? Or is the advice coming from someone like, an influencer that maybe doesn't have a specific degree to be speaking on these different topics? Next slide, please. And this graph shows the frequency of checking social media among US adults by platform. And it's very, very interesting to me. So I wanted to point it out here, because I think sometimes we don't always realize the severity of how social media is, affecting us. And the more often that we are checking social media, the more likely we are to really internalize some of the messages that we are constantly seeing. So as you can see in the navy blue bars on this bar graph, this is US adults who are checking social media several times per day. And you can see that most of those navy bars surpass those yellow bars by almost double, if not more. So this just demonstrates that, social media is very, very big in our society. And that's why it's very important to talk about these topics. Next slide, please. Now let's transition into body image, the perception, influence, and reality. Next slide, please. So first off, what is body image exactly? Body image is the mental representation of how we hold our physical selves, including how we perceive our appearance, size, and shape. And I really want to point out here that it's a mental representation and it's a perception, right? Body image is never truly about the body. It's about so much more than that. It's about the mindset around it. And there's a big, big societal influence around body image. I always say it's never something that is formed in isolation. It's influenced by these societal norms, cultural ideas, the images and messages that we see and encounter in media that often distort reality. And I think this goes even beyond social media. This can also be, in commercials that we're seeing. It can also be in movies, which our favorite celebrities are in, and things like that. So a very big societal influence here. Next slide, please. So here's some things to look out for in terms of social media and body image, similarly to the diet culture piece. So one thing is the highlight reel effect. And maybe some of us have heard that social media is so often a highlight reel. People are sharing their best moments, they're sharing their perfectly curated images, and this oftentimes creates a very unrealistic standard. And this goes really well with the next bullet point here. Filtered and edited photos is something to look out for. There are so many different apps and platforms nowadays where you can edit the, size or shape of your body, or you can clean up, your skin and things like that, which again is creating that unrealistic standard. Next, we have the thin ideal and Fitspo culture, which Fitspo is short for fitness inspiration. And oftentimes this is, a promotion of a very narrow definition of beauty. So it might be focused on, being very thin or being very toned or muscular or really having a specific body type. And then finally, I know I brought this up earlier, but this is a really, really big one. Before and after photos is something to really be aware of. Many people who may be on, a fitness journey or maybe on a weight loss journey might share a before and after photo, that physical transformation piece, and it's just something to be aware of, right? Because again, I think that sometimes this is something that, young adults or teenagers or kids can fall into that comparison trap with, right? They see, oh, this man had this amazing weight loss transformation. Maybe I should do that too because he's getting this praise, and that comparison piece. Next slide, please. And now to discuss the intersection of body image, diet culture, and how this correlates to eating disorders, we'll dive into some statistics and the prevalence of eating disorders here. Next slide, please. So first off, 9% of the US population, or 28.8 million Americans, will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. And this also goes along with the fact that 4 out of 10 people in the US will know someone or will have had an eating disorder at some point in their life. So it is not affecting small numbers of people. Also, according to a study from the American Journal of Health Behavior, 70% of girls aged 12 to 18 reported that they regularly compare their bodies to images that they see on social media. So almost 3 out of 4 teenage girls are, kind of falling into that comparison trap. And next is 80% of those with an eating disorder never received treatment, which is a very tough statistic to hear, that a lot of people are struggling alone and in isolation. And I think that's why it's so important that we talk about these topics and break that stigma around it. And next, NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association, reports that 35% of normal dieters progress to pathological dieting, and that 20 to 25% develop eating disorders. So, this is a big one because a lot of times when, we fall into that trap of diet culture, we say, okay, I'm going to start the keto diet, and we don't think anything of it, right? It's a quote unquote just normal diet we're going to try, probably go off of. But a lot of times there are people who, are predisposed to develop eating disorders. There's different personality traits and things like that. So very, very important to, proceed with caution, I would say. And then finally, less than 6% of people diagnosed with eating disorders are medically diagnosed as underweight, I think is the bottom word here. So I think a lot of us have this ideal in our mind of maybe like what an eating disorder might look like. You might think, it's a thin, young, white woman, when the reality is, eating disorders do not have a look. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about nurturing well-being. So now that we kind of have a better understanding of diet culture, body image, how it affects us, what are the alternatives? What can we do to feel better internally, externally? And that's where we can come to embracing intuitive eating and body positivity, which we will discuss. Next slide, please. So first off, intuitive eating 101. So as mentioned earlier, I am a certified intuitive eating counselor, and I remember being in, my schooling, studying dietetics and thinking, there has to be another option, right? Besides diets or besides restrictive eating patterns. And I actually discovered the intuitive eating book, and it was really powerful for me. I wanted to learn more and more about it. So that's when I became trained to be a certified intuitive eating counselor. So intuitive eating, it's a book at the end of the day. It is also kind of an idea, and it's made up of 10 principles, and those 10 principles are principles that invite us to break free from diet culture's constraints and allow us to reconnect with our body's innate wisdom. We are all born as intuitive eaters. When we're babies, we cry when we're hungry, and our bodies kind of like send us those signals naturally. And then it's when we are introduced to diet culture that sometimes we get a little bit disconnected from that, and we don't always eat very intuitively because we are following more external rules. So a big piece of intuitive eating is listening to your body, those hunger and fullness cues, honoring cravings, and savoring the bites that you're eating. And overall, it's really about breaking that diet cycle. So like I was saying earlier, sometimes diet culture can cause us to deprive ourselves, which then causes us to have cravings and maybe binge, right? That restrict binge cycle. So it allows us to break free from that and eat in a sustainable way. Next slide, please. So how can you implement intuitive eating into your life? If you feel like you or someone you know is struggling with their relationship with food, what are some tangible steps that you can take? One thing is eating mindfully. So really savoring the food that you're eating, paying attention to the flavors and textures, and eating without distractions. And sometimes I know eating out without distractions is really difficult in, today's day and age. We are on the go, we're busy, but trying as hard as you can to, sit at that dinner table, eat without distractions can be really helpful. Also listening to your hunger and fullness cues, right? So eating when you're hungry, stopping when you are comfortably full, which will allow you to rebuild that trust with your body signals and allow your body to trust you again. And also honoring cravings is a big one. I think a lot of us might think cravings and we kind of associate it with a negative connotation, but truly cravings are your body's way of communicating its needs. So it's important that you allow yourself to enjoy those foods without judgment, without guilt attached. Next slide, please. Also, it's about rejecting food rules, right? So maybe those food rules that were so ingrained in us from diet culture, labeling, vegetables as good and labeling bread as bad, right? Just for a random example there. So really rejecting those rules and realizing that those maybe didn't serve you. Practicing self-compassion is also very, very important here. And intuitive eating, it's all about progress, not perfection. I always say it's a journey, not a destination. And that's sometimes what is really difficult about intuitive eating, because diets are, they give you more of a destination, right? You have that weight loss goal that you're working towards. You have the rules around eating, whereas intuitive eating does not have that, but it's truly going to be sustainable and give you, so much more mental clarity, more room in your brain for other things that aren't food. Next slide, please. So now let's discuss body positivity. Body positivity, it is a movement. It's a very powerful cultural shift that celebrates self-acceptance and challenges society's narrow beauty standards. And one thing I like to discuss about body positivity, first and foremost, is that maybe not every single day we are going to feel super positive about our bodies or love our bodies. Sometimes that's just not realistic. So I like to also bring up the idea of body neutrality. Meaning, even if I don't love my body one day or feel super positive about it, can I still feel neutral about it? Can I still accept it? Can I still care for it? Can I still speak kindly to it? Body positivity also embraces all bodies. So again, it's promoting the idea that all bodies are valuable, regardless of their shape, size, or appearance. And it really helps to foster confidence, and it helps you embrace your unique body. I always say, if everyone in the world lived in the same body, if we all look the same, I think it would honestly be a pretty boring world. Next slide, please. So how can we cultivate this body positivity and a more positive body image? Big thing here is curating your social media. So making sure that you are following people who live in all different sizes and shapes and colors of bodies. And also with that, unfollowing or muting people that you feel like maybe you are comparing yourself to or cause you to not feel so great about your body. Also, affirming self-worth is huge. So providing yourself with affirmations that aren't about your body, saying, I am a great friend. I have a great passionate soul, things like that. Also surrounding yourself with positivity. So making sure you're surrounding yourself with people who maybe, aren't talking negative about their bodies and things like that. Dressing for confidence is also very, very important. I always say you want to feel confident and comfortable in the way that you're dressing. Maybe if you wake up one morning and you're not having a great body image day, maybe we shouldn't wear the tightest pants that we have in our closet, for example, to draw less attention to your body. Self-compassion, self-care, and advocating for change, because at the end of the day, this is a very, very systemic issue. So it's important that we advocate and talk about these topics, even if it's just to our friends and our families at first. Next slide, please. Strength and resilience. So let's discuss the importance of seeking support and having those connections even within our communities. Next slide, please. So first off, you don't have to navigate this journey alone. If you are someone, or someone who is struggling with, their relationship with food, or maybe struggling with the eating disorder and are one of those people who haven't gotten the help yet, there's a lot of strength in reaching out for support. Break that stigma. It's a very courageous step. And there are so many, therapists and registered dietitians that are out there that specialize in these areas, and it can be really transformative work to work alongside of them. They can provide you with tailored guidance. They can address your unique challenges, because there is no one journey that is the same, and there's also no one journey that is linear, right? So they'll be there alongside of you all of it, or alongside of you for all of it. Next slide, please. And for some key takeaways, next slide, please. So first off, body image. It's a very complex, not about the body, multifaceted concept influenced by societal norms and the media. Diet culture is something that perpetuates those harmful beauty ideals. It has that thinness ideal, and it can really, really lead to negative mental health consequences. And then we have intuitive eating and body positivity as two really, really awesome and empowering alternatives to these restrictive diets and to the self-criticism. And finally, building resilience through self-compassion, seeking professional support, and connecting with communities is very important for our well-being, for our overall health and well-being. And I always say that health is so multifaceted. It's more than the physical piece. It's the mental piece. It's the emotional piece. It's the social piece and everything. Next slide, please. Here on this slide, I have some resources. So I have a few of my favorite books here that you can read or that you can share with others. Big book, I would say, if you are struggling with diet culture, your relationship with food, is the Intuitive Eating book. And there's also a workbook. In addition to that, they also have an intuitive eating workbook for teens if you are working with a younger population. Also some great body image related books here, and a few websites as well, if anyone wants to take a photo, or they can send that out later as well. Next slide, please. And that is it. That wraps up my presentation. I appreciate you all. Thank you again for listening. I hope that you had some takeaways. Attached here is my email and also my website. This QR code is to my website, where you can learn a little bit more about me, about the work that I do, and also the services that I provide, because I do provide nutrition coaching, online virtual coaching for young adults and even teenagers. So feel free to check me out there as well. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll pass it right back to Joshua.
Thank you so much, Jaclyn. I so appreciate you presenting. I know this is something that you are very passionate about, so this is something that is transformative, and I hope that our audience took so many key takeaways and life lessons that we can be able to apply within our own lives, as well as sharing it with other people in our network. So Thank you once again, Jaclyn, for being here. And now it is time to open up the Q&A session. So the Q&A session is basically where you can ask Jaclyn questions while she's still here. I have the chat pulled up, so if you have any questions regarding the presentation of what Jaclyn talked about, now is your chance. I want to start off, Jaclyn, is um, you brought up so many great points. Um, what is something that we can do to hold ourselves accountable in ensuring that we can be able to be consistent with our daily routines?
Yeah, that's a really good one. Something that you can do to hold yourself accountable for your daily routines. I would say the thing that I do personally that I find to be very, very helpful is creating some sort of, plan ahead of time. I think if you have a plan, that is always going to set you up for success versus I feel like doing something on a whim or saying I'm going to create this really great morning routine. But I think if you have a plan, it can be really helpful. So a lot of times what I like to do, even like the night or evening before when I'm wrapping up work, getting ready for bed, whatever it is, I like to get my notebook out and kind of like create a chronological plan for myself for the next day, like what I want to do in my routine. So maybe it's, I want to wake up at 6:30 and then I'll say I want to finish my glass of water and then I'm going to eat a snack. I'm going to go to the gym, right? Just like implementing a chronological order of those healthy habits that you want to implement into your routine, I think can be really helpful. And then also, as you go through it, checking off those boxes, right? Because that can provide you also with, positive reinforcement and also even like incentive in a way. So that would be what I would say.
Awesome. I love how you said to like journal because I often like journal and that helps me like keeping me being consistent as well as, when you look back, it's like, oh my gosh, like I made so much progress like throughout the day and what I was able to accomplish. So I really do appreciate that. My second question to you is what advice would you give to your younger self? Because I honestly feel like when you dive into this topic, I was just thinking to myself, okay, what could Jaclyn give her younger Jaclyn, like her younger Jaclyn self, like advice to?
Yes. Yeah, that is a wonderful question. I actually used to have a podcast. It's still out there if you do want to listen. It's called Bits of Balance, and it's actually all about like diet culture and these topics we're talking about today. And I used to always ask my guests, what is advice that you would give your younger self? So it's a great question. And I think the biggest advice that I would give myself is just to not take things too seriously and don't worry so much, right? I think so often we get in a mindset of, constantly worrying and constantly trying to control things that we can't in the future. I always say you can only control the controllables, and really that's what's in your present moment. And I think I spent, a lot of like my teenage years and even my college years just worrying a lot and getting worked up and realizing that everything is going to work out the way that it's supposed to. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would tell myself.
That's awesome. I love that. I love how you say that everything's going to work out because as somebody that who is going off to a four-year university next Wednesday, it's very important that you just gotta remind yourself like everything's gonna work out. Even when things don't go according to plan, you just gotta, keep it pushing, keep it going. So I definitely love
Exactly.
that. Wanted to turn
Exactly.
over to like our audience to um, ask some questions that you have regarding the presentation about Jaclyn and her work. So the floor is open, and then if there is not going to be any questions, we will wrap this up. Any questions?
Good thing or a bad thing, and that I was so thorough, or maybe I don't know. I feel like a lot of this information, it takes a while to kind of like digest even to come up with questions. So also if you come up with a question tomorrow, this weekend, whenever, you can always feel free to reach out to me via email as well. So that works too.
Yeah, and we will be sure to send out all of the information to our guests and panelists, so that way you guys can have it. Oh, this is a good one. For those who want
Yeah.
to eat healthier, where can we find a good quote unquote eat this, not that list? For example, if I'm craving cookies, what is a good substitute? That's a really good question.
That is a really, really good question. Okay, so for those who want to eat healthier, where can we find a good eat this, not that list? I think that something to think about when you're thinking about eating healthy is the mindset of I'm trying to think of how to put this. So there's a big kind of like scarcity mindset that can come in if you take cookies out 100%. I think so often you hear like if you're craving cookies, then don't buy them, keep them out of the cabinets, don't have them in your pantry. But a lot of times that can lead to a scarcity mindset. And then when you do allow yourself to have the cookies, you end up kind of, wanting all of the cookies versus having just two or three cookies because you don't know when you're going to allow yourself to have that cookie next. So I would encourage you to, get curious about that and say, can I still maybe have cookies every once in a while? And maybe the other times I can have, a healthier alternative. And to ask or to answer your question more directly, I don't know if there is, an exact eat this, not that type of list, but I would say something that could be really fun is to get creative in the kitchen, like with a healthier recipe. That's something that I really enjoy and that I recommend to my clients. So you could even look up online, like a single serve healthier cookie, thing, and it might say, okay, swap the sugar for a more natural honey, or swap the flour for, an oats or something like that. So that would be something that I would really recommend. Is the internet has a lot of recipes on it and resources on it and swaps. So that's what I would highly recommend. And it's always going to be a little bit healthier and more nutrient dense if you make it at home in your own kitchen as well and less processed. That was a long answer. Hopefully that was helpful.
No, that's a really good answer. It's just, taking what you have and working well with it. It's all about like changing things up, like the same thing that like we change our routine just to be able to, get new results and experimenting. So it's just very important to, continue to experiment and be able to
Yeah.
find solutions that work for you. So that was a beautiful answer. Any other questions before we wrap up this educational webinar? Again, Jaclyn, thank you so much for being here and sharing your lovely expertise.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for hosting and thank you all for coming. I dropped my email in the chat as well if anyone does want to reach out. And that is also just my website, fueling-freedom.com. So you can find me there as well.
Yep, that is awesome. Let's see. If there's not any other questions, let's shall close this up. So, next slide, please. Perfect. As a thank you gift for everyone attending today, um, we are giving out free access to our digital safety course for educators and parents. In this course, we break down the top digital citizenship and wellness skills you can teach students and use yourself to stay healthy and safe online. You can access the course for free by using the coupon code all caps, dig safety 24. That's DIGSAFETY 24 before August 31st. Again, that is coupon code all caps, dig safety 24. So DIGSAFETY 24 before August 31st. Next slide, please. Awesome. We hope that you enjoyed this educational webinar. And if you enjoyed this educational webinar, we have a few upcoming events that are going to be happening in the near future. So please scan this QR code. We want to make sure that you are equipped to ensure that you are empowered to make a change into your own lives, into your own communities as well. So again, be sure to scan the QR code. And again, if you want to reach out to Jaclyn and support her work, her email is listed in the chat and her website is also listed in the chat as well. And after this webinar is over and concluded, we will be sure to send out an email to all of our guests and and just go from there. But once again, thank you so much for hopping on and spending your lovely Tuesday afternoon with us. We hope that you have a great Tuesday and continue to make the world a better place. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.